Welcome to Before First Gear, a series where I sit down with top racers to learn how they got started, honed their skills, and some of the unique challenges they faced along the way. Every racer has a story, and I look forward to hearing it. So I'm joined today by Fartuch. He's the director of instructors at Skip Barber Racing School now. He's got a really interesting story coming through karts, up and through a few different series, getting into Skip Barber, and now working through the Skip Barber chain and actually helping launch that whole program that's now getting into IMSA and into some really cool racing experiences and programs that Skip Barber is doing to help students actually go from novice right into a professional driver. So definitely want to hear a bit about that towards the end of this. You know, I think to start this off, Carter, where are you right now, number one? And then I want to talk about just the very first part of your experience of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for having me on here. And currently I'm in Fort Pierce, Florida. That's where I live now. Been living in Florida, it's going on about 8 years now. Got out of the cold of Pennsylvania and wanted to get into the sunny palm trees and everything and all that fun stuff. But so started my racing career when I was, I would say, about 12 or 13 years old. None of my family ever did any type of racing. In Pennsylvania, where I grew up, we lived in this townhome, and a bunch of our neighbors, basically, they all used to watch NASCAR. And every single Sunday, they would get together, watch a race. I was going through a little bit of a tough time in school when I was a little bit younger, and just trying to find the next thing that I was passionate about. And an indoor go-kart track opened up in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, called Lehigh Valley Grand Prix. My dad, who he was always somebody who would tell me, like, hey, if you feel like doing it, do it. I'm not going to push you to do it. It was one of the few things that he was like, you know what? I really want you to do this. I don't know why. I just really want you to do this. And he had me go to this indoor go-kart track. And I was just completely scared out of my mind. I was like, you know what? Let's go. Let's do it. Went, really enjoyed it, was pretty quick, and they had an indoor go-kart league starting up within like 2 weeks from then. And the owner of the go-kart place was like, hey, you should come in and just maybe sign up for at least one race, do at least one race and see how you do. And again, I was at that point, I was scared. I was so skittish of anything that I was doing, but my dad pushed me and was like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? We finish last, we don't like it, we don't do it ever again. So I went in, did it, and I ended up winning the first ever race, got on pole, all that. So I did the whole rest of that indoor league, and I won every single race, won the championship on it, and got into this big indoor karting magazine for all of Canada and the United States. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is something that I can actually grab onto, gravitate towards. I don't know what it was. I just had such a passion for it. I don't know if it was just watching it on TV my whole life growing up, but there were a lot of endurance races that happened with the indoor karting scene as well. So a lot of like 12-hour endurance races, 24-hour endurance races even. There were world championships that would come over to the United States, and I started to get invited to do those and got into those indoor karting races and
but
started
that was
to do really good.
that was indoor still.
Indoor still.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Because I mean, you're 12 or 13 at that point. You're like already old, for karting in a way. Yeah. I mean, like 14 years old now. I mean, you're at Skip Barber, right? So I'm sure when guys come out of karting, how old are they the first time they get into a Skip Barber race car? 12, 13, right? 14?
12, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like you're starting a little delayed there, right? Which is
Big
amazing,
time.
right? Because you're crushing it.
Yeah, big time. And it was, again, something that I was like, man, I know we don't have the funds to do, but I want to do it. And lucky enough, somebody from the outdoor karting world came into the indoor karting world, and they were like, hey, I have a go-kart that I race professionally at New Jersey Motorsports Park in Millville, New Jersey. They were like, why don't you come on out one weekend, try out the go-kart, all that kind of stuff. And ended up going out there and tried out the go-kart and ended up absolutely loving it. Was running competitive times right away. And me and my parents, we scrounged up whatever money we could, and we bought me a go-kart. My dad and my parents, they saw the passion that I had. They saw I had something, and they were like, why not? Let's do it. So then started doing outdoor karting as well.
And then, so from there, I mean, it's like you're doing your first, I guess, small regional outdoor karting races. I remember actually I did some races at Englishtown Raceway.
Oh, yeah.
And then at
Uh-huh.
Lime Rock on the Butterfly, the autocross circuit.
Yep.
This guy is an instructor at BMW now, Jan or Hans.
Maybe.
Johan, this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Johan.
endurance karting. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Good buddy of mine.
Yeah, awesome. You get through that. You're doing some open outdoor stuff now, but then how do you
Hmm.
actually progress into a competitive outdoor series? Because you're talking really club level stuff still versus competitive national stuff where you're on kind of that series that guys are there to actually become professional drivers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the difficulties was, getting into the outdoor karting world is I was at an age at that point when I finally went to outdoor karting. I was about 15 or so. And at 15, you could either choose to do 1 year of junior karting and then have to transition to the senior category, or you just start in senior category right away. And, again, talking to a lot of people there, they were like, hey, we know the budget that you have, which wasn't much at all. They were like, I don't think you can afford to get a junior cart now and then have to get a senior cart the next year. Why don't we throw you to the wolves, put you right in the senior category? So that's what I did. Went right into the senior category. And like you were saying, all these kids and people that I was going against were all people that have been racing in kid karts since they were 5, 6 years old. So, I was really getting thrown to the wolves with it. And I had this one guy he was kind of my mechanic and tuner and coach almost. His name was Chichi. He would have me go out and grab really old used tires that other people used. And I had to race on those every single weekend because it was, karting, even at that time, was expensive. I couldn't afford to have new sticker tires every single session. So he told me, listen, the only way that you're going to make it in this racing world is if you learn how to be fast in any kind of situation that you were in with how the cart was, with tires, engine, whatever it was. So went out and I was racing old tires versus people with new tires, and I was beating them. And I got some attention from some people, and people were starting to help me get into national races and stuff. And at that point, my dad asked me, he was like, listen, my whole life, ever since you were born, I've been trying to save up money for you for college and for, something for when I leave this earth for you to have. He's like, I'm going to ask you a very serious question. Again, I was a little bit younger. He's like, either every single thing that I saved up for you, I'm going to use it all right now to help you just hopefully get that chance and be seen by somebody, or we stop racing right now and you have maybe a little something when I go. And I didn't even have to think twice. I said, Dad, we're going racing. So he spent every last bit that he had to help me progress through karting and stuff. And luckily in 2013, after doing a bunch of national karting races and stuff, I won this big championship up in the Northeast and racing against a lot of top drivers. At that point, one of the karting chassis brands that was located in Italy is DR Racing Kart. Danilo Rossi used to race against Ayrton Senna and stuff. They called me up and they said, "Hey, we want you to be one of our factory drivers for this following year." So from winning that championship, I got a pretty big break in karting, and I got a factory ride. So they got me a brand new go kart motor, got me into all these big races and stuff, and did really really well.
I have a
And
question.
yeah, go for it.
You might not remember, your dad was putting all his cards on the table and he said, hopefully I get a big break of some sort. Did you actually have a sense of what that big break could be? Was it, hopefully I get picked up by a factory karting team? Was it like something's going to work out, hopefully?
It was mostly, yes, it was mostly something where I would get picked up by a team where they would be able to pay for everything. And I knew that if I had the equipment, I could win. So yeah, I was kind of banking off of that. And then, hopefully that would transition to actual big car racing and big time racing there. At that time, karting was so big and it was such a profession that you could actually do. I had all these karting magazines of all these factory drivers in Europe, and that was my goal. My top goal was to be a paid karting driver at that point, because I never even thought that I could become a race car driver, just because I was told so many times by so many people that I would never be able to make it because we didn't have the funds. Just having a factory ride was huge for me, and I was hoping that would be that break.
if I'm really going to make a go of this and actually try to make a career, pay bills from this, I've got to get into an actual race car.
Yeah.
And that's when you go to Skip Barber Racing School.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in karting, actually, one of my coaches that I had for a couple of years in karting, he went to Skip Barber, and I would go to his races when he went to Skip Barber, and he was my coach at that point. I knew that was the mecca at that point. That was how you got from karts to cars. That was how you made something happen. And it was one of those things where for one of my birthdays, my parents were like, "Hey, we got you this 3-day racing school at Skip Barber." They knew that's what I wanted to do. And that
You
was,
must have lost your shit when you got that. I don't know
oh
if
my
they,
God.
yeah, I mean, that's the greatest gift in the world, right? For a
Yeah,
16
yeah.
year
I
old
was
kid.
like, yeah. And again, even at that point, I was like, you know what? Just to say that I was able to get into car racing, maybe I can market myself that way and just
Yeah.
say, hey, I've driven a race car. Like, give me a chance somehow. And yeah, so went to Skip Barber, went to a 3-day school, met a lot of awesome instructors, people that I'm still really good friends with now, and then ended up, still karting within that time. And from the people that I met at the 3-day, they were like, "Man, you really need to come to a 2-day. Like you're pretty quick, and we'll see what we can do to help you." And we scrounged up money and got me to a 2-day advanced school, and absolutely loved that. So then, some time went by, and I would say it was about end of 2014 or so. The Skip Barber Race Series had in their old formula cars an actual, winter series or summer series even sometimes, and um, they put me into a summer series race. My parents did, and I'll never forget it. It was at Lime Rock Park, the same place that I did my first 3-day school at, and I was going against guys who are, racing in IndyCar and stuff now, and I was battling for a podium position, my first ever race, and I went for a pass in turn one and just came off the brake way too fast. Ended up spinning out, didn't hit anything, but my first time ever spinning in a car, and I was just so defeated. But it just made me that much hungry. And I think at that moment, I was like, you know what? I know I can do this. I had that taste of victory in car racing now against people who I knew were quick. And, at that point, I think was where I was like, you know what? I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it in car racing now.
I mean, that's got to be a little frustrating, right? Because you've got this opportunity and this skill and this talent, but you don't know how to actually harness it because there's no
Yeah,
capital, right? So,
exactly.
I mean, it's got to be really frustrating at that point.
Beyond frustrating. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and again, it's, constantly being told when you're in karting that, hey, you're never going to make it in car racing. I hope you know that, just because, yeah, you might have the talent, but you don't have the money. So I was just like, you know what? I was also told I would never be able to win a championship in karting, and I won a couple. And then, from there, we just didn't have the funds to continue going the open wheel route, which is what I eventually wanted or originally wanted to do. Is I want to do the whole road to Indy ladder system, but just couldn't afford it. So then at that point, I was, told about Champ Car, which used to be called Chump Car, and a series called AER, or American Endurance Racing. It was their first ever year starting up, and they were like, "Hey, you can do an endurance race in, yeah, an old beat up car, but you can do an endurance race for cheaper than what a go kart weekend was." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So again, scrounged up money, and me and a couple of my karting friends went together, and we ended up getting along with this one team. Gave us, a good discount and all that kind of stuff, and through that, they would bring on a pro driver already to be the pro coach for it. And at that time, it was a driver called Mike Skeen. A lot of people in
Sure.
professional racing world know of Mike, and he was the pro driver. And right off the bat, I was able to run competitive times with him, and started to do some of those, AER races or Trump car races in old like 1980 something BMW that it would half the time it would lose third and fourth gear. I can only use fifth gear or second gear or whatever. And, it was the same kind of thing that I was always brought up on in karting, where it was, I couldn't run with the top equipment all the time. I had to figure it out somehow. So
Yeah.
I was able to figure it out in that type of racing. And, through that and through, meeting Mike Skeen and and just meeting other people there at those weekends, because there were a lot of big pro drivers that would just come down and for fun race or coach a whole team. They would get paid to, coach a bunch of drivers like myself. They introduced me to a lot of people, and I just started talking to a lot of people and trying to figure out how I can make something happen. And, I would go through and I would be able to say, like, hey, I won all these races. Mike Skeen is my co-driver, and so is my co-driver, and all this. And started to get calls from some people and say, like, hey, we see, you're racing and stuff. We want you to come drive for us. This is how much it is. And I'm like, hey, I don't have that much. I don't have anything.
Well,
um,
how much are these guys? I mean, at the end of the day, I know a lot of the AER teams, the guys that kind of run them as businesses, right? They're arrive and drive
yeah.
businesses, so they've got to
Hmm.
make money, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, when folks are reaching out to you, they see that you're there week in, week out. They probably think
Right.
you're funding it, right?
Yeah.
So they're marketing themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. And at that time it was, I would say, 1,000 to 1,200 maybe for an entire weekend.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Um, and that was plenty of track time too. It's gone up significantly since then, just because racing has in general. But at that point, it was like, okay, well, we can try to scrounge together something for this. So we started to do a lot of that. But then, again, at that point, I was talking to a lot of people, and I was given opportunities to come and race in bigger series. For one example, a series called FARA, FARA, in Florida. And it was basically
The
mostly
Florida
races.
Atlantic Racing Association. Doesn't matter.
Formula Automotive Racing Association, I think it was. So,
Okay,
or is. And it was basically mostly at Homestead Miami Speedway. They did some races at Sebring, some at Daytona.
sure.
So I got invited to come down and do a race down there with the team, and did a race. And the team owner for the team, really, he was a really great guy, and saw obviously the situation that I was in. But he was like, "Hey, I just put you in a race and we won. Maybe we can continue figuring something out." And he would give me big discounts on these races. And at first it was, again, old beat up, BMWs or Hondas or whatever it might have been. And then they started to get faster cars. Well, with that, they had a lot of clients that would come in, and they would want to race with
But
their
again,
faster cars.
this guy though, this is like this is a business for him, right? So he's got some
Exactly.
cars. He's doing a arrive and drive for Faro races.
Yep.
So what's the role that you play for him? You're a marketing tool for this guy at that point. You're a young guy.
Yeah.
He's not, this is great for him.
Exactly. Yeah, it was exactly that. And with all the racing and everything, I really always loved the teaching side of it. And the people that always taught me, I took every single thing into my head, and if I had to coach somebody, I knew exactly what they would want to hear.
Yeah.
So they would start to bring in different people, and this team owner would say, "Hey, you want to help coach them, and maybe we can put you in the car at the end of this 5-hour endurance race that they're in one of their real fast BMW M3s or something." So that's what I started to do with him, and they started to get faster and faster cars. They started to have clients that would come in with Porsche GT3 Cup cars, and Lamborghini Super Trofeos and stuff
What do you
like
mean?
that.
The clients would come in. How would that work? What does that mean?
So basically, the team owner, he would have different people come in with their own race cars. Basically, like somebody that Joe Schmo would own a Porsche GT3 Cup car, and he'd call this team owner down in Florida and be like, "Hey, I have this car. I want to race in this series that you guys are running down in here in Florida. Can you house my car, take care of the car, and then maybe I can get some coaching as well." Well,
Okay.
luckily, he had me there also to try to help coach him, or try to help him with the coaching duties of things. And through that, met a lot of those awesome guys, and they would start throwing me in, their Porsche GT3 Cup cars, and we were winning a lot of races. And at that time, I was still living in Pennsylvania, but I saw the opportunities in Florida, and especially racing in Florida, and the coaching aspect of things in Florida,
Sure.
and mostly the money that was involved down there. So me and my now wife, we were like, hey, let's make a move. Why not? Took a chance, moved down to Florida when I was about 20, 21. From there, just started to show up to all the different Florida racetracks, and was still getting opportunities with this team, and being a co-driver in some of these races. Most of the weekend I would just be coaching the guy, and then at the end of the weekend there would be a 5 hour endurance race or something in one of these cup cars, and just kind of kept on pushing with the dream that way. And
What was the dream at that point?
the dream at that point was, I was getting a lot of taste of GT3 racing and GT4 and whatever else. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to make it as a professional race car driver now. Now the dream wasn't anymore, I want to be a factory karting driver. I want to put all my chips down to see if I can get picked up and make it there. I wanted to do it as a professional race car driver. And again, it
Yeah.
was just that motivation of a lot of people telling me I can't do it.
Sure. How important? I mean, it's almost a rhetorical question, but how important were some of these relationships that you forged that essentially led to people giving you track time or giving you race seats or giving you, right? I mean, it really,
Yeah.
everyone I've spoken to so far has a couple folks in their lives that shouldn't have been there. They're random people, and they have literally given them opportunities that have become
Yep.
inflection points in their career.
Absolutely. I mean, those meetings are just priceless. And one of the things that my parents always instilled in me when I was young was be nice to everybody. Try to be friends with everybody. Never have an ego about you. Always try to be there to help somebody. So I went, and actually I ended up going, another quick little subject here. I went to college at a local community college because I didn't want any debt, because I couldn't afford to have any debt. But I went to college programs that would either, it was all for my racing career. So I first went for automotive technology because I thought, hey, if I can learn how to work on cars, maybe I can start working for a race team, and maybe I can convince them to give me a shot in their race car. Worked as a mechanic for a little bit, absolutely hated it. So I was like, okay, well, I want to try to market myself that much better at the track too when I go to the track and I meet these people. So, and at the time I was a busboy at a restaurant. So I was like, you know what? I really like this restaurant stuff because I get to talk to people all the time, and it's helping me come out of my shell a little bit more too. So I went for hotel, resort, and restaurant management, knowing that I had a bunch of business classes that I can go and take. I was like, you know what? These business classes could help me market myself that much more with these meetings. So I ended up doing that, and that's what really helped me talk to these different people and just try to help them out as much as possible. And I met the right people, and
Sure.
they were like, hey, you know what? You're an awesome kid. You have talent. We want to give you a chance.
Were you extroverted? Like, you said it was helping you get out of your shell, but like, you
Yeah,
seem like an extroverted guy now. Were you not earlier? Cause,
I was not. No,
okay.
absolutely not. No, I was very skittish with everything I did. When I was in karting, I kind of broke out of that shell a little bit, but in car racing, especially with how expensive it is and how hard it is to get into that world, I needed to be even more personable than I was in karting.
Sure.
As in karting, I started to get a little bit of an ego on myself. So I was like, you know what, I need to recheck myself and come in and figure out how to make this happen in the car racing world. And yeah, so that ultimately helped me get all kinds of different rides and stuff as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were exchanging some notes before this, and it sounds like the first big or next big inflection point for you is the Celine Cup comes
Yeah.
into play in 2019. So,
Yep.
first of all, can you tell me, I know about the Celine Cup a bit, but it'd be
Yeah.
great to hear from you about the Celine Cup. And then second of all, how the hell that came about.
Yeah, yeah. So, Celine Cup was obviously Steve Celine has built all kinds of crazy cars before, and they came up with a brand new sports car. It was going to almost be like the Celine S7 back in the day. It was called the Celine S1. They wanted to create a single make series around it, which was basically the car was pretty much a mix between a GT4 and GT3 car. Awesome cars when they ran correctly. But I got that opportunity. Actually, it all goes back to Skip Barber, because one of the guys that I met when I went to Skip Barber when I was younger, stayed in contact with him throughout my whole racing career. Um, and he ended up leaving Skip Barber, and he went to actually head this whole Celine Cup project. 2019 is when it happened. 2019, he was contacting me like, hey man, I know you're coaching a bunch of these gentleman drivers. Do you have anybody who's maybe available to come in and racing this series. So he would keep on hounding me on it, keep on asking me about it, and I just couldn't find anybody to do it. And I was actually at Watkins Glen International Raceway at an IMSA race. I was coaching these two guys that I helped kind of build an IMSA team with in the Porsche GT3 Cup series. And I got a call from this guy, and he's like, "Hey, can you be in Portland next week, Portland, Oregon, for next week?" I'm like, I mean, maybe I would have to talk to my work and everything. And he's like, "Okay, well, if you can, you have a ride in the first Saline Cup race." And I was just absolutely blown away. I was like, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but stay in contact with this guy and trying to help him get people to get in that series.
Was
He gave me an opportunity.
was he an instructor at Skip Barber when you were there? How
He was
who
sort of an instructor, yeah, but he was
Okay.
also part of the administrative kind of side of things. In that week, I had to call my work, which again, at that point, I think I was maybe serving. I was a server now at the restaurant I was working at. I had to call him and say, "Hey, you got to find somebody to cover all my shifts next week. I got to go to Portland, Oregon," and had to figure out how to get an FIA license, how to do all this other kind of stuff. And at that point, it was just a one race basis. So went out to Portland. It was a rough weekend for the whole series in general, but that first weekend, I met the whole Celine family, came really close with them. Great, great people. I ended up winning the first ever race category that I was in. So after that weekend, celebrating, they were like, "Man, this was awesome. This was great." And I would say maybe a week or two later, I got a call from the same guy, and he was like, "Hey, what if I told you you'd be racing in the whole full Saline Cup series?" And I was like, "That would be an absolute dream come true." He's like, "All right, well, you're racing the whole series." So it
That's
was,
unreal.
again, yeah, I remember the exact moment where I was standing with my wife, broke down with her because she was with me my whole, racing career, helping me along
Sure.
all the heartaches and all that. And it was huge. I got an opportunity to race professionally for free. So ended up doing that whole series. Won a bunch of races and stuff, and ended up whoever wins the championship, they had a pretty much a senior category or adult category, and then a young gun category. The young gun category went all the way up till you were about 20. I want to say it was 26 or 27.
Okay.
So I was in the young gun category against some pretty quick guys, and the winner of each championship got a full factory ride in a GT4 car. So each champion would share the car in a whole GT4 America ride. So I won the championship. It was out in Las Vegas. It was all really, really cool. And again, the whole series was backed by a pretty big Chinese investor. And this series was supposed to be full bore in China the following year as well, and then in the US as well. I was supposed to go out, and I was talking to all the Chinese press and everything. I was supposed to do a couple of races over in China the following year, along with a full-time factory ride in GT4. Well, right around that time, we had this thing called COVID happen. And right before COVID even happened, this investor ended up being caught for something. I don't know exactly what it was, but
And has not been seen since. Like
since. So
okay.
so that whole entire thing folded, I would say 6 weeks before the first GT4 America race of the season.
Ah, it's brutal, man. That's
Yeah,
brutal. Yeah,
yeah.
because it's terrible. Was it just a function that they didn't fill the grid that they called you in for the season, or they just didn't get the kinds of guys they wanted, or
What they really wanted to do was they wanted to have a competitive roster. I mean, they would have, paying drivers come in and also race, but
yeah,
they really wanted to have them paired up with very, very talented drivers so that they can market the series as, "Hey, these sports car drivers are coming and racing our series." Actually, Johann Schwartz was one of the guys who raced in the series.
cool,
And, Cameron Lawrence and a bunch of really, really quick guys.
sure,
And, yeah, so that was kind of a shame. But one of the best things that happened out of that was one of the guys I was competing against was one of the lead instructors at Skip Barber Racing School at that point.
okay,
And he was the one who was hiring all the instructors and scheduling them and all that kind of stuff. And I became friends with him during that season. And at the end of it, he's like, "Hey, why don't you come out and instruct with us at Skip Barber? I think you would be really, really good with it." So I was
So
like, "Yeah,
you don't
absolutely.
even have to kind of go through an interview process because Skip Barber and now let's jump ahead a few years and we'll go back.
Yeah,
But like
absolutely.
your role right now, you're director of instructors, and one of your roles is recruitment and putting guys through the interview process and making sure they're a brand fit. And as I
Yeah,
understand, Skip Barber does have a relatively strict criteria for their instructors. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah." So, to be able to have the position that I have now, starting where I idolized Skip Barber back in the day, it was just absolutely unreal. And going through, being an instructor at Skip Barber, getting hired and everything, now because of the way Skip Barber used to be, and then there was a time period where it went through different ownership and it kind of
Sure.
fell down and stuff. The new ownership, their whole goal was to come in and build Skip Barber up back to its glory days and make it even better than it ever was. And I've been a part of that entire process now these last couple of years. And, with that comes a lot of top people now coming to our school. So with top people means I need top instructors. So the criteria to bring in instructors is I'm always trying to find somebody who's better than me and always trying to find somebody who I know that I would look up to when I was, a kid going through the whole school process. It's difficult. It is extremely difficult. They need to meet the proper criteria to be a Skip Barber instructor. I knew what it felt like, and I knew the instructors that I had when I went to Skip Barber. And as kind of crappy as the old cars used to be, I never thought about it because I knew the instructors were so, so, so awesome. I looked up to them as legends, because they were.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I've been trying to build as my instructor roster is trying to rebuild the legends and use some of the older legends that I used to have, but also try to bring in new ones. And
Yeah, I love that. I love the premise of rebuilding the legends is pretty awesome.
yeah,
I think some of the guys that I'd met in the past when I've been through Skip Arbor at Lime Rock, they've been there for like 35 years or
yep,
something, and the stories they tell, and it's a function of that era, right? Because I mean, they lived through. Yeah, they were racing with Paul Newman, right? They were
yeah,
racing with
yep,
names that are in the history books for many
yep.
different reasons. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like the racing industry in America right now is out of that golden age for sure.
We started off with just a couple of cars. Now we have the largest fleet of F4 cars in the world, a huge, huge fleet of Mustang GT cars. We have all this other kind of stuff as well. And now we've branched out to, as you can see here, we have our own pro race team. Just the progression within the last, I would say, 3 years has been absolutely insane. It's been hard to keep up with, but it's just been so awesome to say that I've been a part of it because, again, Skip Barber was the absolute mecca when I was going through all this, when I was going through this industry and trying to make it in this industry. And now to say that I'm one of the people that can help the future make it through, the future IndyCar drivers, the future Formula One drivers come through, it is just absolutely incredible.
Like it sucks that Skip Arbor is $8,000 for a 3 day course. I get why it is. Like I
Yeah,
get that they're expensive cars and it's the whole program. When I went through Skip Arbor, it was $3,600. Same time that
right.
you went through Skip Arbor,
Yeah,
and I did a couple seasons in Bertle Roos, who've actually gone out of
mm,
business just you know this year,
right.
and I could do an entire season for almost what a race weekend cost with Skip Arbor, which
Mm.
I mean, for a dude like you're 15 years old today, it'd be it'd be nearly impossible for you, right,
Yeah,
to kind of go through this. So I mean, I guess my question to you is, you have a lot of experience in all across kind of developing series and drivers. I think Skip Barber is for a perfect kind of person. Are there other options in your opinion? If you recommend someone go into AER if they're young and they don't have that kind of money to support that?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing, we're obviously we want people to race in our series or race with us, but we'll be the first people to tell you like, hey, listen, if you have this much budget, go and race in this kind of series. And like AER was a perfect example of it. And again, all these prices have gone up since, but it's
Yeah.
it's an affordable route, and
I did a
it's a
90
way.
minute stint in AER, I think a couple of them for
Yeah,
$500, man. It was like,
yeah, yeah.
I'll do that all day, dude.
Absolutely, absolutely. But whatever it takes and whatever you think you need to do to be able to reach the goals that you need, you do.
Yeah.
For me, I couldn't continue racing in the series back in the day because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
But, my goal was, if I can race in that series again, that would be absolutely incredible. There's a lot of different options out there for different racing series to race in. And if you don't want to go, the Formula Car route, or you don't even want to go, the touring car side, GT4 side, whatever it might be, AER, Champ Car, and now WRL, World Racing League, is another good example. Although those weekends are pretty much like a pro weekend now as far as the pricing goes. But
Yeah.
you know, I would tell people never stray away from those kind of series. No.
If you were, how about this? If you went back right now to 15-year-old Carter, is there any guidance you would give him of, okay, here's what you need to do over the next decade to get to whatever that goal might be?
Work harder on finding sponsorships. Work a lot harder on finding sponsorships. And again, at that point, racing in those series like AER, Champ Car, absolutely awesome. But it's not going to get you to the professional level that 15-year-old Carter wanted to really get to. I had to do it the hard way and just take a chance and meet people and stuff. And again, that's when racing was maybe a little bit cheaper. But nowadays, every single part of racing is pretty expensive. I would tell myself, try to find some kind of sponsorship, some kind of barter system to bring some company along and try to help with my racing career. I would still tell 15-year-old Carter, go and do those cheaper kind of races, but don't spend too much time there.
Yeah.
Spend more time trying to find farms to race in a series like the Skip Barber Formula Car Series, or go and race a year at TC America or something. It's tough because, going through the karting world and everything, karting is awesome, right? But I tell people so much now, I'm like, I wish I spent more time trying to find funds to get out of karting quicker. Because it for a whole karting year, it's the same price as a whole, GT3 ride sometimes.
Wow.
It's
Yeah, it's crazy.
absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's difficult because again, times have just changed a lot,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, I've obviously I've been going through all these interviews with people,
Yeah.
and half of them are kind of our generation. I think we're about the
Yep.
same age.
Yeah.
The other half are a much older generation, and
Hmm.
it's crazy talking to them because I mean, their stories are unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're talking
Yeah.
about Le Mans winners and ex Formula One drivers,
Hmm.
but at the same time, their career progression was a much more seamless. There was less
Yeah.
competition, there was less cost, there was actually large viewership at these races at that point. Things were definitely easier, and I think the one thing that I've been getting from it, there's been a bunch of things, but one of the big things
Hmm.
that come to mind speaking to you is that you got to go full send in a way. So it's
Yep.
like, fortunately or unfortunately, now in this day and age, it's like, if you're going to do it, you've got to commit not only
Hmm.
110%, but it's like you can't just try it out for a year or 2 years. You got to, it's like a 5 year plan, really, that
Yeah.
it's a long term gamble. You've been coaching now for or 5, 6, 7, 10 years. How long have you been
Yeah.
coaching?
About close to 10 years now. Yeah.
Okay. So you've been coaching for like 10 years and obviously affiliated with Skip Barber. You get to interface with a lot of extraordinary drivers. And I
Hmm.
know that you've coached a whole bunch of NASCAR guys when they're going over the
Yeah.
road courses. Can you tell me
Yep.
a little about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So in, I would say 2021, I think it was the first year that NASCAR ever went to COTA, Circuit of the Americas out in Austin, Texas, and you know, we we have a big partnership with Toyota. We also have a big partnership with Ford as well. And at that point, we were like, okay, well, we have racing schools at COTA. Um, why not have us be, the liaison or the person in between to help these NASCAR drivers learn the track for one, but at the same time learn a little bit more about how to do road course racing. Because, I mean, we all know back in the day in NASCAR, they didn't have nearly as many road course races. They had what they called road course ringers, where they would bring in, Boris Said or Jacques Villeneuve to come and do, one or two races a year at these tracks. But now road course racing has become so much more prevalent, especially in the NASCAR world, that these NASCAR teams need their regular driver to be fast there as
Dude,
well.
whoever came up with that at Skip Barber deserves a promotion. That's such a great idea. That's a
Yeah,
great crossover.
Roush was one of our big partners, and we were like, hey, bring your Roush drivers to us, and we will teach them how to race this track for one, but also how to, just learn road course racing a little bit better.
Yeah.
So throughout that year, we started with like Ryan Newman and Chris Buescher at that time. And then we had all the Toyota drivers come in, whether it was in the Truck Series, Xfinity, or Cup Series. We had, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Matt Crafton, John Hunter Nemechek. All these guys all came in. There was like 13 or 14 on one day. The next day we had like, I don't know, 18 of them, something like that. We would have a bunch of us sit in the right seat with some of them. We'd go out and we would be coaching them one on one and teaching them all the tricks of CODA, but also, again, teaching them just different strategies they can use for setting up passes in road course racing. One of the biggest things that NASCAR drivers do on road course racing, they all have a common trait, which is overdrive the entry sideways out. And in road course racing, that just absolutely kills your tires. It might be good for one qualifying lap, but throughout a race, they're just absolutely destroying everything. So, um, you know, it was beyond eye opening to see that these guys are absolutely incredible in oval racing. But then when they came in to do some of the road course stuff, some of us were like, "Yikes, man! It's you need some work." Um,
Did you find that they learned really quickly though?
Yeah, so that was going to be my next point is, like you said, been able to coach a lot of these professionals and have a lot of these awesome people come in, and the learning curve for them was a lot less steep. They didn't have to, you know, try every single session and try to just figure it out. They just couldn't figure it out. Yeah, some maybe couldn't, but most of them were like, oh, okay. I remember feeling this in the car on a road course, and they would fix it maybe that next session.
Yeah.
And each session they would try to refine it because that's what they're built to do. They're built to find those different kind of strategies. Um, and now I've been working with these guys for a couple of years, and a couple of the ones that I've really been working with the most are Noah Gregson and Ross Chastain. Coached them a bunch of times, and actually Noah Gregson, I coached him one time, and he after the day he's like, "Hey, can you come and coach me on every single road course race throughout the whole year?" And that was
That's
in his
awesome.
almost championship winning Xfinity Series year. And so, Skip Barber shirt on and everything, he would bring me in, and I would be there and coach him throughout those whole weekends. And
What are you looking for, when you're coaching a guy like that that's in a car that you're not really familiar with, by the way, right? You've
yeah,
never driven an Xfinity car.
right.
What are you looking for when you're talking to him, when you're giving him feedback?
Well, so I first listen and I talk to his crew chief, and I listen to kind of what is a common trait that the car has at road course races, or where they're commonly struggling with. Is it long run pace? Is it they're just getting outbroken in corners or whatever it is? And automatically I can tell with data or just watching them out there exactly what they're doing wrong. And again, that's just a lot of years of kind of watching them and stuff. But one of the awesome things is our Mustang GT cars that we have at our racing school, they behave exactly like a NASCAR. That's what every
Yeah.
single one of those NASCAR drivers would tell us. They have a lot less power, about 325 horsepower, but they react the exact same. It's a heavy car. You can really feel all the load transfer of it. So from being with them in the right seat, I know their traits automatically, especially with a heavy car. And all you have to add with the NASCAR is you have more power. So the right foot just needs to be a little bit more precise, you know? So, one of the hardest things for a driver in NASCAR that's been used to oval racing versus road course racing is the braking. In road course racing, we're all used to having a really sharp initial spike of brake pressure and then trailing off, whereas they're so used to bleeding into the brake pedal and then coming off on big ovals and stuff like that. But it doesn't work in road course racing, so they end up getting what they call wheel hop or lockup midway through that braking zone. It's because they have that same kind of linear brake pressure. So that I'm always looking for things like that, or just how aggressive they are on a throttle. And if their crew chief and them are constantly talking about their long run pace just is struggling a lot, well, I'm watching and seeing what their speed is on exit of every single one of these corners versus maybe the fastest guys, and saying, well, you're overcooking the rear tires way too much. You're getting on the power way too soon.
Yeah.
You can very visibly see it during those NASCAR races. You don't have any onboard video, which is tough. All they have is a data system, which is, it's a little bit elementary, believe it or not.
I mean,
But
it's NASCAR. I totally believe it.
it's
Like,
very elementary. It blows my mind that they haven't come up with something better. But you can watch live telemetry of every single car. You have every single car's data. So, I would be up there on the pit box with them, and I would have my headset on, sitting right next to the crew chief, and the crew chief would, be saying, and the engineer would be saying, man, we're losing time in this kind of section. And that's when I would get on the radio and say, hey, Noah, or hey, Ross, remember what we talked about when we were at Coda, or when we were at so-and-so, you're overdriving the entry, or, you're popping off the brake way too soon. You're being too aggressive through here. That's why you're
this is
losing time.
during a race. They have live
During,
telemetry.
yep.
That's like cheating in a way, right? Like
Yeah.
you literally can see where a guy's faster than you.
You see, yep. You see everything.
No way. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
And,
wild.
but that's where, I come in handy, or us instructors come in handy, is because we know why they're faster in those sections. The
Sure.
engineers, they can think, oh man, hey, bud, you're losing in sector two. You're losing it in these 3 or 4 corners.
Yeah.
Where I'm able to dissect what they're doing in those corners. Mostly, I can see, their brake, where they're braking. Now, the thing with the NASCAR telemetry is it's not completely accurate.
Okay.
It's a GPS kind of activated thing, where telemetry shows that they're braking because they see a deceleration. So, and you can see how fast they're decelerating. So it shows that, hey, they're braking right here, but really they might be braking maybe a little bit beforehand. And there's just a lot of strategies that you can use
Sure.
with those cars as well. So
So have you had the chance to actually drive an Xfinity car or NASCAR? Have you been on an oval before?
I just got my NASCAR license approved to race in the Xfinity and Truck Series and all road course races. So I'll be going
Awesome.
to a couple of tracks, meeting with some people, and
So
trying to get behind the
are you
wheel.
not approved for ovals then? Is that how it works?
No,
They approve you.
yeah.
Okay.
So you basically tell them what you want to apply for the NASCAR license, and in order to apply for the oval one, you have to go and you got to do like a late model race, or you got
Sure.
to do some kind of oval racing. For me right now, I'm interested in getting into some of these road course races.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense. Makes total sense. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time again. Super
Yeah,
interesting, dude. Yeah, really, really cool
thank you.
stuff. And I look forward to seeing you on the track at some point.
Absolutely, man. You just let me know. We'll get you out somewhere.